the report says a visitor exposed herself to you during a visit. What happened with this incident?
With that, this, I don't know how to say this without making it sound like it's a justifiable thing. I've recently met a woman that's very important to me in my life, and navigating a healthy relationship is difficult, especially over the phone visits and things like that. And we may have gotten carried away during a visit, so it's still wrong. I take accountability for that. I don't really know how to explain myself on that one.
In 2 months, so June 3rd, 24, this one is a BO9. It says violated video visit rules. Was this a similar incident, or what happened with this one?
It's a similar incident.
This Utah man is facing 100 years in prison, but up for parole, and yet it seems he's blown it with already having these 2 write-ups. Now we're about to watch the crime that landed him that 5 to 100 year sentence, and you might not recognize him from the footage. Then we'll jump into the parole hearing, and I'll unpack it with the details at the end.
Back at home tonight, surveillance cameras captured the minutes an Ogden store clerk fought back and got the gun from an armed robber. Tonight, police say they have the suspect behind bars thanks to DNA found at the scene. Northern Utah specialist Mike Anderson's live. Mike, the clerk fought, but he was also seriously injured.
Yeah, Dave, you know, as you're about to see in the video, the clerk was able to get the gun from the robber. Unfortunately, he also had a knife, but tonight he says he is relieved and glad to hear that there is finally a suspect behind bars.
The physical confrontation happened almost immediately.
He trying to punching me a couple of times.
But what Mohammed Shahjahan says you don't see was just seconds before.
Robbery, I come to the door and he holding the gun like that.
And in what was perhaps a clumsy moment,
he just come here trying to hit me.
Shahjahan says the pistol
is falling on the ground.
But it wasn't long before the tables turned.
The clerk fights back and at some point gains control of the handgun.
Then I just pick the gun and then I hit him by his forehead.
You can see that impact right here. Arrest records say 20-year-old Michael Ryan Call was struck 2 times, leaving a gash on the left side of his forehead.
The suspect was actually injured during the course and commission of this robbery or aggravated robbery, and what you would call a blood trail left the scene.
Valuable DNA evidence picked up last February that detectives say led them to Call Wednesday night.
This particular suspect had a DNA profile in the system already.
You can see at one point, Shahjahan was able to pull his attacker's hood and mask from his face. He says the man he saw, a regular at the fast stop near 28th and Monroe.
He used to be coming every week in the store.
But in the moments after the video, police say Michael Ryan Call jumped over the counter trying to open the register. And as Shahjahan wrestled him some more,
he just coming in, pulled the knife and hit him at the eye.
An injury that he says left him blind in the left eye. But he says looking back at what happened, he's just glad things didn't turn out worse.
That's the truth in Islam alive.
And Shahjahan says even though it's been tough, he has gone back to work at the convenience store. Michael Ryan Call arrested on suspicion of armed robbery and aggravated assault. Police say he only got away with a few packs of cigarette that night. No money. Back to you.
Well, sir, I would just like the board to consider, I have made mistakes. I take accountability for those mistakes, and I apologize for the things that I had to do and that I had to do to grow. I was actually just discussing it with one of the officers waiting for this hearing. I more of a student of life, and I hurt and I had victimized people in order to learn, and it was wrong. It was very wrong of me. But within the last 2 years since this last hearing, I feel like the growth and development has been exponential. As you said, there were 2 new cases in between my original hearing and my first rehearing. And you can see that that was indicative of me perpetuating a cycle of violence and continuing to live a negative lifestyle and a gang lifestyle. Since that last rehearing, I have come to a place where I feel like I can thrive. I've taken advantage of all of the opportunities that were allotted to me, and I feel like that's indicative of someone who wants a better life. I feel like there is still a debt to society that I owe, but I feel like as of right now, the things that I can accomplish in my current circumstances have been accomplished. That being said, I would like to give back to the community if given the privilege to parole. I would like to work with children so that they don't have to make the same mistakes that I do and hurt people in the future. I'd like to just live life as a normal individual, as a civilian, and I'd like to move forward from the things that I've done.
And I think you mentioned a couple specific organizations you'd like to volunteer with as well, and thank you for those comments. I'll include those to what I've reviewed prior to today. So after your last hearing, the board set the express expectations of MRT or its equivalent. Since then, you've completed MRT, CBISU, anger management, LDS 12 steps, getting by going in, and Garfield substance use treatment program. I think the prison or the jail staff report that you're also currently in a welding class. Is that right?
Yes, sir, that is true. And I also have a paid position where I clean the section, and I'm working on obtaining better employment as of right now.
So, as far as it seems like you've met the programming expectations that the board did set. I reviewed and received a letter from Tad Draper, the clinical director of the Dare to Soar program. It's a very positive letter regarding your behavior, your participation in that program. Describes you as being a leader recently in the program, helping others, giving back, and taking your sobriety seriously with your attitude in that program. I've provided a summary for that. Wanted to ask you, what have you learned in these classes and programs that you've done?
Honestly, that I have potential. Like, I think that was something that as a younger man, I didn't realize that I had potential, and that I was very impressionable, and that this lifestyle seemed somehow glamorous, and it was just the way to go. And then I didn't realize that I had other options. Like, people would tell me that, but I didn't believe it. But being able to gain that self-confidence through achieving these things and like continuing to progress, I've realized that I am worth it, and I can make a difference to myself, my family, and eventually society.
After your last hearing, the board did set the expectation of no disciplinaries. You've had 4 incidents leading to disciplinaries. The first 2 happened within a month or two of the rehearing. August 6, 2022, BO5 forgery, fraud, embezzlement, theft is what the disciplinary is. I think you used another inmate's phone pin to make a phone call. What led you using the other inmate's pin in this incident?
With that incident, I was on E level, and you're only allotted a certain amount of time to use the phone and things like that. I was just trying, honestly, I was cheating the system, just trying to be able to call my loved ones. I was kind of in a hard place with my loved ones, and I wanted to be able to maintain contact, and it was wrong of me to do so. But that was ultimately why I did that.
Okay. And then August 25th, looks like you got a new tattoo. I guess it said, no, you had tattoo paraphernalia in your cell. Were you giving or receiving tattoos at this time?
Well, my entire time in the prison, I was tattooing. So I was generally giving tattoos at those times.
And just recently, so April 26, 24, there was a BO9 violating a contract. The report says a visitor exposed herself to you during a visit. What happened with this incident?
With that, I don't know how to say this without making it sound like it's a justifiable thing. I've recently met a woman that's very important to me in my life, and navigating a healthy relationship is difficult, especially over the phone visits and things like that. And we may have gotten carried away during a visit, so it's still wrong. I take accountability for that. I don't really know how to explain myself on that one.
In 2 months, so June 3rd, 24, this one is a BO9. It says violated video visit rules. Was this a similar incident, or what happened at this one?
It's a similar incident.
How do you plan to address these things? Certainly, because I'm looking, these are B disciplinaries. You had about 2 years, almost 2 years without disciplinary, but your prior, disciplinary history is quite concerning. There were concerning behaviors involved in that. What do you need to do to avoid these things and moving forward? Because it's possible the board could say a release date with no disciplinaries. Considering your history, they'll look at it as a whole. What insight do you have into establishing evidence that you're ready to comply, right? Because there's not a half comply, there's a comply. So what thoughts do you have on that?
With that, honestly, at this point, nothing is worth risking my success, my future, my release, anything like that. So as of right now, I'm just laying low. I'm doing I'm following everything to a T, and I'm trying to overachieve in aspects of, I said, I'm trying to further my employment here. I'm trying to find the best housing situations here. I am consistently trying to move forward and progress at this point. there's no room for failure and there's no room for digression. If I'm not progressing, then I'm digressing, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Now, I do want to highlight though, you avoided disciplinaries for almost 2 years prior to these two recent incidents. That in reviewing your file, prior to the 22 hearing, multiple very concerning incidents, gang-related activity, assaults, weapons, riot type behavior. So to a certain extent, positive change in that regard. What's helped you with those changes?
That was another thing. I believe that it's really the change of scenery, not having to live in an environment where it's either victimize someone or be the victim of whatever type of violence or activity is going on. Being in a place where I can show myself that I can thrive, and also show my loved ones I can thrive. And the positive reinforcement here is actually like a very big thing. Like, not like being in the prison, it seems like it's a lot of negative reinforcement. Here, the positive reinforcement really allows yourself to grow and soar.
Okay. I've read your written submissions about release plan. I also reviewed the letters of support from your mother, grandmother, and grandfather, and your father. They're quite detailed about, I think, the work plans that are there for you, plans for support. I think in reading the specific statements that some of your family members have written, I think they nailed some things right on the head as far as the details of what's important with the release plan. I prepared a report of what I reviewed regarding the release plan, but if you're granted parole, just as far as statements today, what would your release plan look like?
As of right now, I mean, really, I'm probably going to take a week, 2 weeks to be able to get my PATER, voc rehab, get my license reinstated and all those type of things. And after that, I'm just planning on going right to work. I don't know how long it takes to get all of those types of things in motion, but after that, I'm planning on just going to work. And then, as we stated, we're looking at a home where me and my younger brother can live and refurbish at the same time. So, I mean, even on my weekends, that's really what it's looking like. It's looking like I'm going to be spending time with family and loved ones and working.
Okay. It sounded from your written submissions, no specific treatment plans arranged, but willing to comply with evaluations that are ordered, planning to stay involved with classes, programs, etc. And if evaluations are there, planning to maybe work through Weber Human Services. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I've read your written submissions regarding STG affiliation. It sounds like at this point, so you haven't modified, so really still active, but your statement is, or I guess, what is your STG status at this time?
So I haven't modified just because I feel like that more or less puts a target on your back. But as long as you're like open and willing to communicate and being like, look, this is where I stand, like my success and my future is what's most important to me right now. And if you continue to do what's right, like no one can be mad at you for that, correct? Like you guys can't, and also like the men that I used to be associated with cannot be upset with me for trying to better my life. So as of right now, I consider myself non-active. I just I'm not modified or anything like that. I just do my own thing and I try and better myself.
So if you're granted parole, I think almost certainly it will include gang conditions, which would require you to not affiliate with known gang members, have gang-related items in your possession, be involved in gang-related activities, etc. It sounds like you'd be willing to comply with those. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I know you owe a large sum of restitution. I think about $4,000 in relation to the 2019 case, and I think about $31,500 or so in relation to the 2014 case. Have you paid on that restitution at this time?
I have not. I've made inquiries into how to go about that, and it seems like no one's really sure on how to go about all that. But I have made inquiries like in my OTRAC, and I've also made grammar requests inquiring about that.
Okay, it's possible, certainly, that will be owed. I think after today's hearing, the board will have various options, or if and when you are granted parole, regarding whether that is entered as a parole condition or could possibly be turned into a civil judgment, etc. But I'd encourage you, once you are granted parole, to understand that and make the efforts to make a payment plan or work towards that. It sounds like you'd be willing to do that. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And there's various reports regarding your mental health. I think currently you state, so your diagnosis past diagnosis, bipolar depression, general anxiety. Are you currently taking any medications or doing mental health treatment at all?
No, sir, I'm not.
And how would you describe your mental health right now?
Great, honestly, this is probably the best I've done in years and years.
If you're granted parole, sometimes the board will include like mental health conditions, requires a mental health evaluation, doing recommended treatment. I guess if you're granted parole, what do you plan to do to manage any symptoms or mental health issues that may present themselves?
I feel like it's gonna be a harder transition, and so I already am planning on trying to get into like just a one-on-one therapy sessions. I'm not sure if I'm gonna necessarily need medication for any of that, but I am definitely gonna enroll myself into some type of one-on-one therapy sessions. Because with the amount of time that I've done down, the type of time that I did up until these last 2 years that I've been in Garfield County, they were high stress situations, and so I feel like there may be underlying anxiety, post-traumatic stress, things like that. So I'm most definitely gonna take advantage of anything I can get my hands on.
Okay. Well, those are the questions I have for you. Is there anything else you'd like the board to know?
No, sir, based on your questions, I feel like we've covered everything.
Okay, what I'll do from here is take your case under advisement. I put together a report of what I reviewed prior to today. I'll include what we've talked about today in that report, and then I'll submit that to the members of the board, hopefully by tomorrow. There's 5 board members. They make decisions by majority vote. That usually takes between 2 to 4 weeks for a decision to be made. Sometimes it can be quicker than that. Sometimes it takes a bit longer. Once the decision is made, we'll send it to you in writing through the mail.
Okay, so do you think they granted? No, they did not. They denied. And, with Utah, you kind of never know. What we've learned about Utah is that their sentencing, well, it's just a gimmick. It's a gimmick to seem tough on crime because they're really not. I mean, think about it. He received a 5-year minimum, but 2 100-year sentence for this initial crime, the crime that we saw happen on TV. And while he was locked up, he picked up new felonies. I mean, I'm seeing here from what Sir Richard provided that he received a 0 to 5-year sentence for having a weapon in the facility. He received an aggravated assault by prisoner, a 5-year sentence. And he also received items prohibited in a correction center, a 5-year sentence. So he picked up 15 years while locked up, but he's still having parole hearings. This was his second parole hearing. And his full term date is 2029, which again is confusing because he has the 5 to 100 years. So it's just Utah is when we first saw these sentencing before we started to see the parole hearings, we were tricked too. We were psyched out. We're like, wow, Utah, they really don't mess around, but it's actually just a joke. Now, he was denied. They said, hey, complete these programs and don't get write-ups and you'll get paroled. And he didn't. And you might say, look, Mandoo, you don't know what you're talking about. Prison's tough. You're going to get write-ups. And okay. But the 2 write-ups that he received are 2 write-ups that were in his control. These were not CEOs throwing it on him. These were not him having to put in work to make sure. He's like, well, I have a relationship and it's hard to. So, hey, and that's a choice you're making. And that shows a lack of impulse control, which you cannot have because it's clearly if you get out and you don't have impulse control, you're going to end up probably using again, and then you're going to end up robbing gas stations to steal a couple of packs of cigarettes and making someone lose their eye. So, but he was articulate. He's well spoken, and something that we have seen. It's interesting is that those covered in ink like he is seem to be the really well spoken. It seems to be a trend. If you want to see more of them, click the playlist below Utah parole hearings, search for the ones that are inked up, and you're gonna see those that are similarly articulate, more so than I am. And I don't know what it is. What it is that how that works. But there's something there to maybe dive into, look into one day. But that's what we have on this case. And Make sure to subscribe if you want to see follow-up hearings, because we keep tabs of all of our inmates. That's not a blank statement. If they get paroled, we'll keep tabs on them to make sure they don't get revoked or further in trouble. And we keep following them as they progress through their prison records. So subscribe, help the channel reach 100,000 subscribers. And with that, I'll let you go.
The report says a visitor exposed herself to you during a visit. What happened with this incident?
With that, this, I don't know how to say this without making it sound like it's a justifiable thing. I've recently met a woman that's very important to me in my life, and navigating a healthy relationship is difficult, especially over the phone visits and things like that. And we may have gotten carried away during a visit. So it's still wrong. I take accountability for that. I don't really know how to explain myself on that one.
In 2 months, so June 3rd, 24, this one is a BO9. It says violated video visit rules. Was this a similar incident, or what happened with this one?
It's a similar incident.